Hey there, it's McCare. I need to prune my basil. I have needed to prune my basil, but I thought you might like to know how I do this. So first I'm going to tell you that I was growing basil for about 5 years before I learned how to prune it properly. Hello. So I was growing basil for about 5 years before I learned how to prune it, and all that time I thought I was harvesting it correctly. I was coming through and I was picking off the big leaves and taking them inside and eating them, and they were delicious. And it grew new leaves, but my plants stayed so small and they stayed, a main stem or two. And I had no idea that I was doing it wrong until YouTube. So since I learned on YouTube, you can too. Let's take a look at how to prune basil and why. So right here we have an example of a basil that I have not pruned, and you can see how it grows. It's got a couple of stems with flowering on the tops, and it's not doing much else. And we can see the difference when we compare it to this basil, which has been pruned quite a bit, and it's so much fuller and it has so many more stems. So how do we get this instead of that? So basil, just like any of our other plants that we eat, they believe that when they make flowers, which then produce seeds, that they have completed their goal in life. They want to make new plants. That's their whole purpose. They don't care if you like pesto. I wish they cared that we like pesto, but they don't. So we have to encourage them to do something differently. And you can see on basil that when we have a main stem, it tries to make these little side shoots. So what we can do when removing the flowers, and even before they get so far as to flower, we can come down along the main stem, find a place where it branches, so where we have the main stem and then side shoots, and we can cut off here. And then those side shoots will continue to grow. This, we can either take inside and eat it, or we can take the flowers off, remove the lower leaves, pop this into water, probably wouldn't hurt to take off some things, and let this root. So if we get some of these nodes below the water, it will root and make a new plant. And if we remove a lot of the top and get out that last little bit of flower, then it won't have much to support up top, and it can concentrate on the root growth. Once this grows roots in the water, pop it into soil and you have a whole new plant. In the meantime, let's get back to pruning. All right, so I got that one here. And then I'm going to want to take off this flower head, which also has some little baby flower heads. And I'm going to come way down low. Boom. And then I'm just going to do that with all of these. This looks really dramatic. I'm taking a lot of the plant off, but that's all right. It's going to be okay. And all of these little side shoots are going to grow into big, new, productive branches. Now, there are a couple of basils that like to keep their flowers. It doesn't affect their flavor. Most basils, when they start to flower, their flavor will change. Holy basil, like this one back here that's covered in bees, and Thai basil are okay with keeping their flowers, but we still can prune them so that the plant doesn't think that it's finished without impacting the bees. I'm going to bring you in close and I'm going to show you, but most of these flowers are healthy all the way down. They're still green and bright all the way down. And then there's a couple that have turned brown at the bottom. These that are brown at the bottom are going to signal to the plant that they're finished. So I'm going to come down a leaf node or two below the brown spot and cut that out so that the plant doesn't think it's finished, so it'll keep making lots more flowers so that bees can stay happy. I can include the flowers when I tincture or I forget what it's called, but when I put them into oil to extract the constituents of the holy basil, I can do that in with the flowers as well as the leaves. So here's the one with the brown at the bottom. And I'm going to come down 1-2 nodes below it and give it a little snip right there. So see, I took off the brown and then a little below. And I can just do that everywhere I see a brown spot on my flowers. And I'm just going to chop and drop these for today. This still leaves plenty for the bees to handle, and it's going to keep the plant reproducing. Just as a side note for how often, how much, and which plants to do this to, I do this when they get some flowers at the top. Lettuce leaf basil gets flowers really quickly. It's almost a constant picking of the tops. Something like holy basil, I'm going to let it go. I'm growing cardinal basil, and it grows a big ball of red flower. I'm going to let that go because I want to see it. I am going to be pruning all of the basils up in the kitchen garden area, but the ones that I grow out farther in the yard in my like zone 2 area, I leave those for pollinators. I don't trim those flowers. At the beginning of the plant, I do a lot of pruning to make it bushy, and then I just let the flowers go. Those are not for me to eat. I'm not worried about the flavor. At the end of the season, when I'm ready to let the plants go, I go ahead and let them go to seed then as well so that they can reseed. I did not plant this holy basil. It was reseeded from a holy basil that was over here and the seeds blew over. So you don't have to do all of them. You don't have to do it all the time. Just do it as needed and you will have some happy basil. Alrighty? Take care. Later, y'all.